Hey, my friends, welcome back to Embrace the Question. Steve here, and it is time for another episode of Bible Study with me. We're still in Genesis. Listen, I hope you're following along because Genesis is extremely important. It's probably my favorite book in the Bible. Not only is it one of the most graphic books detail-wise, and doesn't introduce a ton of abstract ideas, unlike some of the other books. But unless we understand Genesis really well, we're not going to have a good grasp on anything we read in the New Testament, which is a long ways from here, but we're going to get there eventually, right? Like and subscribe if you're a first-timer, then welcome to the channel. If this is something that you've been following for a while, remember to share this with somebody that you know. Are you ready to get started? We're in Genesis chapter 4, and we already did half of it. We're taking it in 5 verse segments. So I believe we're right about verse 16. Let's check it out. Okay, before we start, I want to move back briefly to the first half of the chapter. We saw that Eve had her first set of kids, Cain and Abel. You know how that story ends, or you know how the initial story ends. But one of the things that we talked about that I didn't expand upon as much as I would like to have was this thought that maybe Cain and Abel were twins. What if? What if they were? We already know that one was a shepherd, one was a gardener. We know that the other one was killed, one was kind of released to go free. What's the significance? In Exodus chapter 16, we're going to have details on the Day of Atonement, in which they have 2 goats, almost identical. And one is slaughtered as a sin offering, and the other is released into the wilderness. That is very much a pattern that I grasp onto, because we find it again in the New Testament with Jesus. Jesus is, as you know, a shepherd. That is one similarity he has with Abel. However, at the end right before the Passion, we see that Jesus is being tried, and Pilate stands up a murderer right next to him. And the murderer's name is Barabbas. Now, Barabbas is Bar, son, and Abbas, father, son of the Father, or son of the High Father. So we have on the one hand, Jesus, who is the son of the Father, and the other hand, Barabbas, who is the son of the High Father. And in that way, they are twins, okay? So I know a lot of people, especially if they're new to studying Scripture, that they find that kind of a comparison offensive. But remember that Jesus was taking on the sins of the world. He was becoming sin. In fact, he became fully sin on the cross. He became a full picture of sin, and therefore a comparison to Barabbas seems pretty tame, because Barabbas was a murderer, right? Like Cain. And Barabbas was set free like Cain. All right, so that's why I'm latching onto this pattern. And we can kind of keep our eyes out to see if we can identify that anywhere else as we go. But I wanted to bring that forward. Let's start Genesis 4:16. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And when he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methujael, and Methujael fathered Lamech. And Lamech took 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Why do I feel like there should be a third named the Santa Maria? Anyway, it's here nor there. And Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. See, I like this for the detail. Okay, there's 5 verses. Let's take a look. So Cain is leaving the presence of the Lord. He's leaving Eden. He's going east. He's moving eastward. East is a recurring direction. And at some point, I really do believe it becomes more symbolic than anything else. East of Eden, the direction that Cain went. The land of Nod, isn't that a fairy tale or a fantasy type? Haven't I heard it there? Some of you will know what I'm talking about, the land of Nod. It sounds to me like a children's fairy tale or maybe a fable. I don't know where I'm picking that up, but maybe you know and can set me straight on that. The land of Nod. Nod means wandering or vagrant, literally. So what we're really talking about here is a place that was named after Cain, not something that Cain named because it meant something. I think he probably named it and then it became known for Cain, the land of Nod. All right, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And when he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So you got to wonder, these cities in this second generation, first generation of offspring, really, they couldn't have been very large cities, right? We're not talking about huge cities, but a city nonetheless. What's the implication of that? Well, I've heard some people expound on that a bit, which they went in the direction of, why did they need a city? Why did people move into cities in the first place? For protection, for cooperation, and why especially did Cain? Remember his judgment from the Lord. The Lord said, "You will wander. You will not find a place to work the land." But here he goes out and he creates a city as if he's going to give it a shot. Interesting. So Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael. And Mehujael followed Methujael, and Methujael fathered Lamech. All right. Lamech took 2 wives, and the name of the one was Ada, and the other was named Zillah. Okay, Zillah and Ada. Ada bore Jabal, and he was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. You would think that maybe that started with Cain, but apparently this guy, Jabal, really took to that way of life. So he was known as the father of those who are wandering nomads. Okay. Let's keep going. We will eventually get to a place where we're going to talk about this first generation genealogy. Okay, if you've ever heard Chuck Missler teach, he made some brilliant observations about this. All right, verse 21. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe. So he was a musician. Apparently that's what they did in his family. They sat around and played instruments, kind of like the Darlings on Andy Griffith's show. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain. He was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Now that is interesting. Why? Why now all of a sudden did we name a sister? Let's see what that might mean. Naamah is pleasantness. Pleasantness or pleasure. So his sister was very pleasant, apparently. Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. I wonder if he talked to himself, spoke about himself always in the first person. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding and a young man to my hurt. Okay, I believe what he's saying here. I believe what this translation is. And let's just flip it over to the easy-to-read version and look at 23. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to me. A man hurt me, so I killed him. I even killed a child for hitting me. Many say that this is simply the same person. He's anybody who refers to himself in this particular way is liable to say anything strangely. I don't know that we have enough evidence here to tell whether or not he's killed one or two. But apparently it was somewhat of an accident, except this one, I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. The Good News Bible would say, I have killed a young man because he struck me. So the Good News Bible is saying this is just the same man. Like I say, there's some different thoughts on whether or not he actually killed one or two here. All right, so we don't know for sure. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. Why? That's because he didn't do it purposefully. That's my take on it. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold for something he did on purpose, then Lamech's is 77-fold for doing something by accident. And we later will have this concept of cities of refuge, which a person can flee to avoid being killed by the vengeful family. So that seems to be the case that Lamech is in before there are such things as cities of refuge. Jesus made mention of how many times do you forgive someone? 7 times? Or 70 times 7? And that's kind of an ancient way of saying unlimited times. So if Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is a whole lot more. It's again, the number 7 there represents a completeness. So 77 is just a whole bunch of that. All right. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth, for she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. All right. We're almost done with this one, and I've taken quite a bit of time explaining some odd things. But the naming of Seth is interesting because it does mean God has appointed. It means that who she thought was going to be the one to avenge her against the serpent, she thought it was going to be Cain. And remember, Abel means vanity. So I don't really believe she ever had much faith in Abel to be the chosen one. She thought it was Cain. But Cain killed Abel, and therefore Cain wasn't the one either. So she's hoping still God has sent another one, another appointed one. He's the one that's going to avenge me against this serpent. And to Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At the time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. That's an interesting topic as well. What does that mean, to call upon the name of the Lord? When we call upon the name of the Lord, it sounds like we are worshiping God, we are asking Him for help, we are saying, oh God, come and help us. That is not the traditional translation for this passage. This is when people began to take the name of the Lord in vain, perhaps. Let's see what we can figure out. It began men to call. That is bidden, to cry, to mention, to preach, to proclaim, pronounce, publish, read, renowned, or say. That, according to what I'm seeing here, guys, honor, authority, character. That's the name. It's just the name. That's a general definition for name. So they begin to call the name of Jehovah. So I'm not gathering anything from this verse that seems to indicate that conclusion that people are starting to take the Lord's name in vain. But why? Why is it now that they're beginning to call upon his name? Is it because he is far removed? They have far removed themselves from him, and so he is becoming more of a mythical figure. I'm always reminded of the Chronicles of Narnia and Aslan, who is never far away, but the people are always talking about him through rumor and through legend almost. It's like they almost don't believe he's real. And now we're at this point here. How many generations are we from Cain, who spoke face to face? So Cain bore Enoch, that's one. And Enoch bore Irad, that's two. Irad begat Mehujael, Mehujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. That's 5 generations. Lamech took 2 wives, Ada and Zillah. Ada bears Jabal, that's 6, and Jubal, also 6. And Zillah is bearing Tubal-Cain, that's 6. And Naamah, that's 6. That's all we know. So there's 6 generations there. Think of, do you know your grandfather 6 generations back? Let's see. I think I do, but I would have to look them up. That was over 200 year span. And this could definitely be more than that. So, what do you think about the ending of this particular chapter? Like I said, we are going to get a bit more into the genealogy as we go. Next is chapter 5, and we're going to, I think, start again with Seth, because that was still the first generation. It's his mom and dad was Adam and Eve. Can you imagine that? So I hope you're getting something here. This is kind of hard to plow through sometimes, especially when we start getting into the names. But we're going to make it through, and we're about to get into some really interesting stuff here in chapters 5 and 6. So thanks for hanging out with me. And until I see you probably in the next day or two, peace.